At 11:11 a.m., sunlight burned white against the limestone of the western wall, and the city sounded like it always does at that hour. A mix of murmured prayers, camera shutters, the scrape of shoes on stone, until a hush rolled outward like a wave from the podium, where a rabbi in a black coat leaned into a microphone that hissed once before carrying his voice through the air, low and deliberate, each word measured as if he were laying bricks in sound. And when he said that within 7 days the deceiver would rise, the word deceiver seemed to stretch wider than language touching nerves that had been waiting all their lives to be named. Phones came up instinctively. The moment was captured, posted, clipped, echoed, and within minutes the timestamp, 11:11 a.m., became a banner in feeds across continents. The symmetry of the numbers feeding the sense that something more than coincidence had just been spoken. Some called it prophecy, some called it theater, some called it the latest algorithmic fever dream. But everyone kept watching. In Jerusalem, time is never neutral. Every hour drips with precedent, and every voice that rises above the crowd must wrestle with centuries of expectation. The rabbi didn't shout. He spoke as if dictating to history itself, explaining that the figure people feared would not appear in robes or rage, but in reason, offering solutions so clean and efficient that faith would feel like clutter. The Antichrist, he said, will not begin with war, but with agreement, not with destruction, but with repair. And those who crave order will cheer before they notice the cost. Around him, the plaza trembled with whispers, and reporters edged closer, weighing how to frame a phrase that could light fires in every comment thread on Earth. By noon, satellite vans were lining the stone road, microphones rising like reeds above the crowd. And a new narrative was forming. A prophecy at 11:11 a.m. in the holiest city predicts the rise of the deceiver in 7 days. Yet behind the spectacle, a slower story breathed. A story of how symbols migrate through the modern bloodstream. Numbers like 11:11, once mere coincidence, now glow as portals for those who watch for signs. It is the hour of mirrors, alignment, awakening. To hear a prophecy at that precise moment is to feel the architecture of chance bend into design. But Jerusalem has heard thousands of designs before. The wall has listened to kings and crusaders, scientists and skeptics, and it knows that words, even holy words, are only as durable as the silence that follows them. That evening, as the plaza emptied and the marble cooled, a rumor sprinted ahead of the facts. Some claimed the rabbi had vanished after speaking, others that he had been escorted away for his own safety, still others that he continued praying behind the curtain of night. Every version added a spark, and by the time darkness fully settled, the city's heartbeat had changed. Across cafes and rooftops, people debated the clock. If the prophecy was true, what counted as the first day? Sunset or sunrise? The countdown became an invisible metronome marking every conversation. Tourists extended their stays. Pilgrims arrived uninvited, drawn by the magnet of uncertainty. In markets, you could hear the two dominant theories clash like cymbals. That the rabbi had glimpsed a literal being already alive, moving among governments, or that his words were metaphor for the spiritual anesthesia creeping across societies that mistake convenience for salvation. Either way, 7 days felt measurable enough to grip, but mysterious enough to multiply. And by the second dawn, the city looked different. Drones hovered, journalists rehearsed live intros, and vendors sold keychains stamped 11:11 Jerusalem. Yet the old stones kept their patience. The wall does not flinch for news cycles. Down in the City of David excavations, archaeologists brushed dust from carved stairs and spoke quietly about timelines far longer than any prophecy. To them, 7 days was an eyelash in eternity. But even they felt the atmosphere tighten. Superstition is a contagion even reason can breathe. Visitors pressed questions. Was there precedent? Did other teachers ever link numbers and apocalypse? A scholar explained that ancient Hebrew and Greek numerology often treated mirrored numbers as thresholds, moments when divine will and human choice briefly overlapped. 1111, she said, is symmetry pretending to be safety. We look at it and think balance, but balance is fragile. By midweek, the world outside Jerusalem had synchronized to its tension. On television panels, analysts of every faith took turns translating the rabbi's sentence into their own doctrines. Some heard a veiled political warning, others a moral parable about technology's coming tyranny. But the phrase 7 days kept its hypnotic beat, and with each sunrise, the digital horizon filled with new speculations. Photos of cloud rings mistaken for omens, street corner preachers announcing second-hand countdowns, forums plotting what they called the hour of reversal. Through it all, the rabbi remained silent, either by choice or by absence, and silence in an age addicted to updates is the loudest reply. On the 5th day, a journalist traced the origin of the message back through phone footage and realized that the man's voice had been clear but not amplified. The system was off. People had heard him through the hush of others repeating each line to the next, a human echo chain that transformed speech into ritual. It wasn't technology that spread the message first, but breath and proximity, ancient tools as old as Genesis. That realization reframed the event. Maybe prophecy had less to do with predicting the future and more to do with revealing what we already fear. Fear, after all, is the most cooperative of emotions. It recruits everyone equally. On the 6th day, as the hour approached again, the plaza brimmed with watchers. Tourists, skeptics, mystics, soldiers, monks, each held their devices like tiny altars, waiting for proof or contradiction. The rabbi's followers lit candles along the edge of the square. Security forces stood discreetly among them. A wind rose from the desert and rattled the prayer notes lodged between the stones, until they sounded like 1,000 wings. Someone whispered that this was the sign, that the wall itself was breathing. But the wall was only doing what it has always done, translating weather into whispers. Then, at exactly 11:11 a.m., a bell from a nearby church struck once, accidentally perhaps, scheduled perhaps, and the crowd froze, as if the city had inhaled again. In that silence came a memory, collective yet unspoken, of how easily humans mistake synchronicity for script. Nothing visible happened. No rift opened, no voice thundered, and yet everyone felt changed because they had faced expectation together. When the minute passed, relief rippled outward, first as laughter, then as tears, then as a wave of applause for surviving anticipation. Cameras swung to the sky, searching for validation, but the only thing captured was light bending through heat. A halo of dust mistaken by some channels as a supernatural ring. By sunset, news tickers declared that the prophecy had failed, while believers insisted that the test itself was the fulfillment, that the deceiver's delay was proof of mercy. The number 1111 stayed on every thumbnail, its symmetry now a souvenir. Night returned, and Jerusalem exhaled. Vendors packed their tables, soldiers slung rifles. The last tourists touched the stone, half embarrassed, half grateful. In a small apartment overlooking the plaza, an old radio replayed the recording. 7 days, the deceiver will rise. The voice sounded tired, almost sorrowful, as if warning had been mistaken for promise. Perhaps the rabbi never meant an Antichrist with a name and a passport, but the collective temptation to hand over conscience to certainty. In that reading, the deceiver is not a man but a mood, the hunger for simple villains and easy saviors. And maybe that is why the message struck so deeply. It described everyone. The city that has outlived every empire understands this cycle intimately. Each generation thinks it will be the last. Each apocalypse reveals itself as rehearsal. Still, rehearsal keeps the actors honest. The crowd learned something in those 7 days. not about the Antichrist, but about attention. When thousands focus on the same clock, the minute becomes sacred regardless of truth. In a distracted age, even false unity feels holy. And so 11:11 a.m. remains etched in memory, not as the hour the world ended, but as the moment humanity remembered how to listen. The Rabbi has not spoken publicly since. Some say he withdrew to the desert to pray, others that he simply returned to his studies, content that his words did their work. Either way, the echo he left behind continues to pulse through algorithms, sermons, and sleepless minds. Perhaps that is the real miracle, that one quiet voice, carried by breath and rumor, could stop the machinery of indifference for a single week and make billions stare at the same sunlit stone, waiting, doubting, hoping, and in that shared pause, rediscovering what prophecy has always been, not a forecast of destruction, but a mirror held up to our desire for meaning.